I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Sitting in for President Tatum tonight, and we will start with a roll call.
President Tatum has already joined exec session, and I believe Dr. Beeson already has as well. So they will be counted as present. Dr. Schumacher, Mr. Munoz,
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt, Mrs. Bowley, and Dr. Bonebreak. Thank you.
I wasn't ready to be first on the roll call, so caught me off guard. We will be moving into executive session, so I will be looking for a motion.
I move the Board of Education of USD 501 recess into executive session for 60 minutes pursuant to the personnel exemption of the Kansas Open Meetings Act to discuss confidential personnel matters to protect the privacy of the individuals discussed. The board will return to open session in the boardroom at, let's see, what is it, 6:31? The superintendent and executive staff are invited into executive session.
Is there a second for that motion? Ms. Bowley, seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will go to a vote.
Thank you. All votes are in and the motion carries.
Okay, we will be back at 6:31. Okay. It's time for us to resume. And next on the agenda, I have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm going to draw it out so Dr. Anderson can find us somebody to lead in the Pledge of Allegiance. Hey.
With our new, we have several people that won elections, from our clerk to also our State Board of Education new member. So, are you back there, Dr. New? Can you join on up with these young ladies?
Yeah, that's me.
All right. So we have a few people doing the pledge. Our newly elected State Board of Education member. Can you say your name and what school you go to?
I'm Brielle Belshi and I go to Topeka West High School.
Senior month, you all.
Genesis Calito, Topeka High School.
Just a visitor, came at 5 o'clock and couldn't wait to be at a board meeting.
Dr. Burrell New.
Newly elected State Board of Education member, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to you to start off with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was the best pledge all year, you all, with 3 people doing it. Thank you so much.
They just keep getting better every 2 weeks. So we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. And so I'll look for a motion.
I move the board adopt the agenda as presented.
I have a motion. And a second from Ms. Foley as we clean up a spill. Any discussion? Okay, then we'll look for a vote.
You can just raise your hands.
Perfect.
1, 2, 3.
Dr. Bonebrake and Ms. Schmidt. For the agenda, thank you.
All right. I will mark it. Yes.
Great. Dr. Bonebrake wants to make it more challenging for my fill-in for Mr. Tatum, I guess. So next up is school highlights. So I'll look to Dr. Anderson for that.
All right, we are so excited. Please join me in enjoying the video of our Topeka West Senior of the Month, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Buckendorf as soon as it ends to introduce this amazing young woman.
Hi, my name's Brielle Belshi, and I'm a senior at Topeka West High School. I'm a math aide. I'm a part of National Honor Society. I'm the battalion commander of our Topeka West Army Junior ROTC. I'm also the head captain of our Topeka West cheer team.
Bree is just an outstanding leader in all aspects of her school life. She's just one of those kids that leads by example, positive role model, enthusiastic, always representing TWHS in a positive light.
She's the one that a lot of the girls go to for help. She is always full of energy and ready to go. She's a really good leader and just being helpful with her squad.
When you first are out there and you see that there's someone in a cheerleading uniform being part of whatever it is that JROTC is doing before a game, your first thought is that those are 2 completely different worlds.
I think they're actually very similar in a lot of ways. Being a community and being together, being united is super important. That's the kind of things that you need to be able to make your team successful.
It really helps her as a captain, I think, in leading the squad. She's always got a plan on what cheer she's going to call, sometimes like the organization from ROTC and the steps that she goes through. She can bring that into cheer.
You see just how excited she is to be here and to be experiencing life and to be experiencing high school. She invites challenge, which has led her to, where she is today.
I want to go to Washburn University. I want to cheer, and I want to major in criminal justice.
She's just so mature and focused on what she wants to do in life. It's just amazing. She just always wants the best out of her fellow Chargers and gives her best.
Just keep being yourself. You are a great kid, and she knows where she wants to go. She knows the steps she needs to take. She sets goals and she reaches for them.
My main advice to her would be do exactly what you've been doing. You've got a good head on your shoulders. trust your instincts. We like to say West is best here. We would be remiss if we did not bring up students like Brielle that absolutely are a testament to why West is best.
Keep going to class, keep showing up. Because that's one thing that my senior year has really been. It's literally just been a great big reward for all the work that I put in those 3 years. But I've never wasted time here at Topeka West because that's what helped me succeed.
Principal will be saying a few words, and I believe it's good for you as well.
Yes, I do. Board members, Dr. Anderson, thank you again for this opportunity to recognize another outstanding 501 senior. Excuse me. Bree is, like you saw in the video, is just a great leader, but she's a dichotomy of, on Friday nights, she's there in her cheer uniform, in joyful and happy and bubbly and getting everyone high in spirits. And then the very next day, she'll be barking orders at the ROTC cadets. Like I said, kind of a dichotomy. Just a great leader, great student all around. Just a great kid. And thank you. We're honored that she represents Topeka West. Thank you. I do have a gift. So I've got a lot of gifts because we went and got that for you, and then I want to.
Then they'd love to see what you have.
Right.
Members will like to be asking questions.
Just told first sergeant, this is my favorite thing.
That's weird. I just asked them.
Really? Did you?
Oh, there's the best thing. Gift.
I don't want to put stuff over it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's purple.
I
It's
love
really.
crayons. I love a good crayon. Thank you so much. There's even socks in here. No, I keep my socks serious.
Mhm.
Seriously.
Right.
Thank you very much.
And then I just wanted to recognize, so I called Washburn University and they're like, yeah, we'll send over, Dr. Behrman over there is a T West parent for a long time. So he wanted to send that over in recognition of you coming to Washburn. So thank you, Dr. Behrman and Washburn University leadership for sending that over. We appreciate that, but more importantly, we appreciate you, Brielle. So.
Yes, congratulations, Brielle. We're gonna see if there's some questions from the board members here, but also I want to see if Mr. Tatum online has any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Schumacher. I appreciate the opportunity to lead the discussion here. Bree, it sounds like you are a very enterprising young woman, and I think you'll probably do some really awesome things. Looks like you've already started on that path, and you're as a military veteran. I'm appreciative of ROTC and a lot of the work that it goes into doing that role successfully. But you're also a cheerleader, and
Yes,
so
sir.
there's two elements of your high school career that involve leadership. And I think that's really, really significant. But I was very curious about after high school. You said you want to go to Washburn, my alma mater. You want to pursue a degree in criminal justice. What attracted you to criminal justice, and how does your background in junior ROTC and in cheerleading help prepare you for a career in criminal justice?
I think those subjects help create a career for me in criminal justice because not only do you have to be a leader, but you also have to be somebody who can step up and know what's going on in a sticky situation. You have to be somebody who's calm, but also very prepared. And being in cheer and JRTC has definitely taught me that. A lot of things happen last minute. a lot of things drop, a lot of things pop up here and there, and you have to be prepared. You have to be ready for those things. And I think in criminal justice, that's a lot of what it is. You appear, you get these things, they kind of pop up on you, and you have to be somebody who is reliable and who can work under pressure.
Well said. Thank you. I
Thank
wish you
you.
all the best.
Other questions? I'll go down to Dr. Bonebreak.
Yes, Brielle, with your persistence, dedication, determination, do you plan to go to law school?
I've thought about it. I've definitely thought about it. I'm not even 100% sure about criminal justice. I would do law school. It's just really long. So
It's only 3 years. High school is 4.
yes, but then you have like after grad, and that's a lot of college for me. High school is already a lot. So I think about college, and I don't know if I could do like 8 years of college. But I've definitely given some thought into getting a law degree.
They got a brand new law school building.
I know, and they have an amazing law system at their education, but also, people change their majors all the time. So who knows? I may also end up falling into that as well. And I would have no problem with having a major or getting a law degree.
Medical school needs changes. Maybe you should head there.
I'm scared of blood. I can't do medical school.
Be an administrator.
Do that. I would love to be an administrator. I don't know. I love to lead. I like stepping up, and I love kind of just taking charge. And like Mr. Desser said, I love a challenge.
Other questions? Yes, Ms. Schmidt.
So you said that you like to lead, and you did cheer and ROTC at high school, and you said you're looking into doing cheer at Washburn.
Of course.
And what other activities do you have your eye on at Washburn University?
Honestly, I kind of need to do more like research. I would love to join a club or do something else, keep myself very busy, but I have such a deep passion for cheer that I'm trying to find something to do to cheer in after college, because most of the time for cheerleaders after college, it's done.
Oh no, we always need cheer coaches.
I would love to actually be a cheer coach. I've definitely taken a lot of thought into that. But I plan in college to really go hard and cheer and focus on that, especially because I know Washburn has an amazing cheer team, and that's a place that I would love to grow. And I just can't wait to be able to go out and make time to cheer with other cheerleaders. Right now in high school, most of the time we can only stunt at practice because of coaches. You can't stunt without a coach and all this and that. But I can't wait to just go out in the grass in the park and stunt with my friends and with the other cheerleaders.
Mr. Munoz.
Oftentimes these amazing seniors who, like yourself, who come before us, they're supported by family and friends and educators. I wonder if there's someone special in the audience who you might want to sort of point out to us, and maybe some educators, some of our amazing educators who were really helpful to you.
Actually, I'm here by myself tonight, but I guess I could point out Mr. Buckendorf. Mr. Buckendorf is always kind of I didn't even know that he would have brought up my name, because I've never been a problem student. So in middle school, a lot of my counselors and principals are like, I don't ever see you. So I didn't even know he really kind of knew what I did or what I was. So when I found that he thought of me for District Senior of the Month, I was like, you know my name. So that was an amazing to actually be recognized. That's another thing is that when I was a sophomore, I didn't really see it as that big of a deal that I was in cheer and JRTC. But now that I'm a senior and I'm standing in front of you guys, it feels so amazing to actually be recognized for the efforts that I put in over the 4 years I've been here.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Anything else? I would just say, whatever path you take will be lucky, because no matter which path you choose, there's always going to be leaders, and you seem to be a natural born leader. and have the motivation. And so I think it's special that we are able to recognize you today. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If you do hang around for about 5 minutes, we'll be taking a break after our final recognition and having photos. This is Native American Heritage Month. We're going to turn it over to the incredible Yale Taylor. And as Mr. Taylor comes up, and he has guests with him, and Ms. Ketterman is with him. So as he comes up with those guests, we also want to acknowledge Mr. Taylor for an Above and Beyond award as of this board meeting. And I believe, is there an Above and Beyond? He already has it. Oh, he already has it in his hand. I did not want to forget, Dr. Gray said, be sure to remember to mention his Above and Beyond. So in the parking lot, there was a car that was filled with smoke. He thought a person was in it. It was Mr. Minky's car. And he jumped to it, opened the car, which was engulfed with flames. He reached in to get Mr. Minky out. Mr. Minky was not in the car. It was a cell phone that had gotten on fire because of, there goes his Above and Beyond Award winner picture. The idea of the heroism of not knowing what he was entering in and enter a car where he thought a person was attempting to rescue Mr. Minky. And because of that, we didn't know there was a fire in the parking lot. So minutes later, the fire department was called, put the fire out, and we all were appreciative and saved. So thank you so much for your willingness and your courage to jump in whenever needed, sir. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about Native American Heritage Month and to share who's with us this evening.
Okay, let me adjust this. Halito, Chimichokma. I do have like two portions of this. The first part's kind of demographics of what we have been doing for Title VI in 501. And then we'll go into really the exciting part, the blanketing of Miss Angie Ketterman. And I promise I won't take too long on this. So Topeka Public Schools, we are a Title VI district. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we do for student services, if you're not aware, is we are a resource for our kids who are in need. Oftentimes principals and staff members reach out to me when they have students that just need some extra support that they may need help with. We also build relationships. Now, obviously, that's what we all do in education is build relationships with our community and our students. But we also, my role specifically focuses on our Indigenous nations as well. And with that collaboration, for instance, John is here tonight to just kind of acknowledge Angie. And then we connect with our clubs and we incorporate any Indigenous activities that we really deem to be something that we want to share. But the Title VI program is unique. It is not based off of actually race. It's based off of political status with the U.S. government. And so because we live within 50 miles of Prairie Bay and Potawatomi Nation, we qualify for these services. And we are here to try to promote Native languages, connect our students together with their nations and do what we need to do. Some breakdowns though of our district. We have 39 tribal nations represented within 501. All 4 of the federally recognized that are within Kansas are in our schools as well. And then our students, we have students that are from Alaska down to Florida. And I think Rhode Island is what I put up there for the other one, but we stretch all across the country and we attend these schools. Our biggest population, though, is by far Prairie Bay and Potawatomi Nation, and that kind of makes sense with them being so close. We have roughly 150 kids who are descendants from Prairie Band, but then we follow up with Cherokees are next, Citizen Potawatomi, and then also Kickapoo Nation, which is also a nation that we recognize here within Kansas's boundaries. They are in great number. Most of our other nations are usually just like 1 or 2 families that have made their way here. But yeah, that's. I do want to identify, I said descendants because our program is a descendancy program. There's like a yin and a yang. There's Johnson O'Malley and there's Title VI. But Title VI, you just need to be a descendant of someone who is federally enrolled, meaning grandma, grandpa can be enrolled, mom or dad, or our students themselves. And I apologize for that image issue, but most of our kids, at least when they enroll and they opt into Title VI, parents get to decide how they identify, who they identify with their tribal ID. So oftentimes I notice if they have multiple kids, they usually just put their own, probably out of ease of paperwork. But we have 77 students who are enrolled into their nation. So that's about a quarter of our Title VI population. And then the rest are represented by descendancy. And then the highlights. If you're not aware of some of the things that we do, I want to point out that last year was a very successful year, which is what, at least I feel that way. We had two community art installments in Topeka. We participated in the Topeka project with a local artist, and our students, we partnered with Miss Latham over at Jardine Middle School, and we had an after-school club in the third quarter where we designed a billboard that sat out for 2 months off right by the VA hospital. And then in our summer camp, which is K through 8th grade, we partnered with the Discovery Center to have each student create a butterfly that is still out in their native prairie grass today. From what I've been told, that exhibit will stay there until time takes its toll, but that means it'll be there for a while. So if you haven't made your way out to the native grasslands, I'd suggest to go walk through it and see what our kids have created. We had our first eagle feather ceremony at the end of last year. We had 5 students, if I remember right, 5 students who received eagle feathers. But we did recognize all of our seniors that graduated. We started a youth summit, and we actually had it. If I'm looking a little distressed today, I actually had our second youth summit at TCALC today. So we started a youth summit. This event is in collaboration with Haskell University. We bring in, to this year it was 6 different school districts, 11 schools came into TCALC, and we worked with Bobby Von Martin, Lisa Lou Baker, Jason the Native Chef, and then K-State, KU, Haskell, and then the Native Nations, Kickapoo had representation there, Prairie Band had representation there, and Citizen Potawatomi had representation there. But we had our kids engaged in some fun art activities. They got to listen to a very good story by Bobby Von Martin. And then finally, we also hosted in spring the Kansas Association for Native American Education. Their spring summit was held over at Bishop last year, where educators from higher ed, along with leaders of Indian country, and then K through 12 faculty and staff attended, where we just the meeting was really just kind of catching everybody up on what's going on within Indian education throughout the country. I feel like we've really got some attention from our neighbors within Kansas, Prairie Band, Kickapoo. Our connections are growing, and I hope we can continue to do that and kind of put Topeka's name on the map for Indian country. Yeah. So I know I went through that a little quickly, but do you guys have any questions, any comments?
Any questions for Mr. Taylor?
Mr.
Yeah, Dr. Bumrick.
What is the senior eagle feather presentation
Okay.
celebration?
So last year, it is very common in Indian country when there is a celebration or a big accomplishment to honor community members with an eagle feather. And so one of the things that has become popular to do is for seniors, when they graduate, because that is a milestone, to receive an eagle feather. Now, there are some stipulations with that. You have to be a tribal citizen. So we had roughly 30 kids last year graduate, but only 5 of them could actually receive the eagle feather, because I actually have to have a physical copy of their tribal certificate to be able to legally give them one. But yeah, that was a celebration that we did I think it was the end of April, if I remember right. And we did that with the help of Mr. Borsall, and then also Noto. They donated their space for us to go out there and celebrate. We kind of tied it in together with our billboard. So Yeah. Did that answer your question good enough? All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Miss Boley might have a.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can keep going.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. All right, so the fun part. So we are going to do a blanketing today for a staff member. So I'm going to read a little bit about what a blanketing is, and then if you two want to go up here and we'll get to that. So, oh yeah, yes, I'm sorry, John. Mr. Borsall is, he is tribal councilman for Citizen Potawatomi, a District 6, District 4, which is Kansas. So he is the rep for Citizen Potawatomi up here in the state of Kansas. And he has been nothing but help for me. So I appreciate him being here tonight. All right. So a blanketing is accorded special significance in Native American society. A blanket ceremony shows respect for those who have made an important contribution to our community in some way and are given as a thank you. The respected guest is draped with this special blanket in front of witnesses, and it is theirs to keep. Our blanketing tonight is for Angie Ketterman. Angie is receiving this recognition not only by Topeka Public Schools, but also by her nation, the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. John Borsall, who is Citizen Potawatomi Nation representative of District 4, is here tonight to present her with this blanket. I'd like to say Yakoki for John for providing this. Now on to Angie. Angie Ketterman has been a dedicated educator and coach in Topeka since 1995. She started her coaching career at Topeka West in 1996 and has coached basketball, softball, volleyball at French Middle School, Topeka High, and Washburn Rural Schools. In 2016, Angie began teaching adapted physical education in Topeka Public Schools, where she continues to make an impact. She currently serves as the assistant volleyball coach at Topeka High, head basketball coach, and assistant softball coach at Topeka West. A passionate advocate for Native American students, Angie has also taught in the Title VI Indian Education Summer Program since 2013. She is the owner of Roadrunner Design LLC. And outside of her professional life, Angie is a proud mother to her daughter Ashton and her grandmother to Kaylin and Kenzo. Congratulations.
I suspect a board member or two might have a question for you, Ms. Ketterman.
Yes.
And maybe others as well.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Questions? Yes, Mr. Munoz.
Well, there was, Ms. Ketterman, congratulations on this recognition. There was quite a list of things that you do here within the district. I wonder if there's anything else that might be left out that you'd love to share with the board to help us learn more about yourself and all the great work that you do.
Nope, just been in the district since 1995, 96. A lot of coaching and being a para, and now I do adaptive PE. So.
Great. Miss Boley.
I can't imagine how you feel being honored in this way. This has to be such a great honor for you, and we are so glad that we were able to witness it. So thank you, Mr. Taylor, for allowing us to be here. It's so nice to put a face to a name. I see your name across the district all the time. And I keep trying to figure out, do I know this person? And so now I have a face for that. You do a lot for our district
Well, I
besides
also have a
coaching.
little sister who is the CT at Williams. So she was at Shaner and Loman Hill before, and now she's at Williams.
I don't think her name was Angie though, right?
It's a Ketterman's confused, so.
But I have read your name often in like leadership positions and helping with curriculum in the district. So I've seen you do a lot for our district, and I want to thank you for that. And
Thank you.
I'm just wondering what your feelings are in receiving this honor tonight.
It's amazing. I had no idea for sure what was going to happen. Knowing John, it's pretty amazing.
Well, congratulations on this, and thank you for coming and honoring her in this way.
Thank you, John.
We so appreciate you being here tonight, and
Thank you.
and allowing us to watch this ceremony. Thank you. It's an honor for myself, I'm sure for the rest of us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with Miss Boley that it was an honor for us and Mr. Borshoff for you to join us. We can tell that Mr. Taylor and Miss Ketterman respect you and value you very much.
I have a quick story.
Yes, sir.
2 years ago? Three. This gentleman walked in I have an office down in Seabrook Shopping Center. Not there that often, but this young man walked in the door and introduced himself as the counselor for Native American students in public, 501. And I turned to him and I said, "Is this a new position?" He says, "No, there's been previous." I says, "No one else has ever contacted me." And since that time, we've become good friends. And he does a lot for our students, and we appreciate that. So,
Yes, thank you. And I think Miss Boley, and I'll check on Mr. Tatum too, but I think Miss Boley has another question.
Mr. Taylor, I am so sorry. I missed your event this morning. I appreciate the invitation.
I saw you were out doing something too, so we're all
Yeah,
busy
I know.
helping the
I'm so
kids. Yeah.
sorry. I thought, oh no, that's gonna work, but I appreciate the invitation and please don't forget me at other times. But I was just wondering, do you have some other grand plans that you want to put in place for our district for these awesome students?
Well, we have a real unique opportunity with I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but the KSDE is actually really taking notice to Title VI programs. And we have also been working heavily to influence our what they call the HGNS. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on what the history standards and information is, but the HGSS, that's what it's called. It's been modified actually quite a bit to include Indigenous stories. And I was able, with the guidance of Miss Anderson or Dr. Anderson and Miss Wallace, who have allowed me to do this, work alongside KSDE to go down to these nations and help shape in the information that all students are going to learn about our Indigenous people. And with that, there's going to be a lot of PD opportunities. There's going to be a lot more curriculum designed and developed and led by the Native nations of the U.S. So for me, the future, it looks like it's going to be a lot of PD training. So yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That is going to be so wonderful. It's so nice to see that you are building pride in their own culture.
Of course.
And that you are helping them identify themselves once again.
And I think
We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the main goal, just to kind of to say it is, my goal is to connect our kids, to connect them to these nations and their nations, because one thing that I do see off a lot is that our kids don't have a lot of resources that ties them back to their family and their community. So whatever I can do to kind of connect those pieces, that's what I'm about. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else, either from those here or from Mr. Tatum?
I was just going to say, Dr. Schumacher, congratulations to Miss Ketterman. This is quite an honor, and keep up the good work that you're doing. And for Mr. Taylor, man, every time you come, you blow us away with some new enlightenment. And this is just, I mean, I enjoy it every year when you come and do a presentation for us. And it really just highlights the good work that you're doing for our students with native ancestry here in Topeka Public Schools. And keep up the great work that you're doing too.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, we'll take a little break for photos. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Taylor and Steve.
I'm good. I'm good.
All right, Mr. Taylor, you're right here.
There we go. All right. There we go.
Oh, you had family with you. And who's with you as they're getting ready to transition? You want to share with me?
This is my sister Shelley, and then my granddaughter Kaylin.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Can you take the
Okay. So I think we're at public comments. And we do have somebody to address the board, I believe. So Dr. New is busy, but Dr. New is signed up to address the board. And Dr. New, can I read the little blurb as you walk up? I know you're experienced with this, but just for consistency's sake. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the board. We ask that your remarks to the board be respectful. If you should have a complaint against a specific employee, we ask that you submit your written complaint to the superintendent. If the complaint is against the superintendent, please address your written complaint to either me as board vice president or the clerk of the board. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Burl New, and my residence is 2767 Southwest Blue Stem Drive, Topeka, Kansas. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself to you all this evening as your District 6 representative for the Kansas State Board of Education. Thank you for that show of your confidence in me, and I do hope it's because you know that I will continue to do my best to represent you all and take great care of our children. I'm honored to have this as my very first stop of about 25 school districts, but it was so meaningful because I was given the green light today to begin to reach out to the districts that I will be representing in District 6. And it's an honor to be able to be here with Dr. Anderson and wonderful school board members, and to let you know that I will always be available to you if you have questions or concerns or anything that you believe I can help with. I'll be there for you, and especially for our children. Also, I just wanted to share that I will plan to attend as many of the school board meetings as possible, or as I review agendas, things that I know are going on that would need a voice in the school board. So thank you again, school board, Dr. Anderson, and patrons and community of Topeka Public Schools.
Usually public comments don't get 2 rounds of applause, but that was well deserved. So we will move on to disposition of business by consent. So I do believe I need a motion for that.
Mr. Vice President, I move the board approve the items of business by consent as presented and authorize the board president or vice president or superintendent to sign the special projects and purchasing contracts for and on behalf of the board.
Is there a second? Ooh, Dr. Bonebreak got that one. Any discussion around the items? See none, I'll move to a vote.
Mr. Tatum, I just wanted to double check. You meant to vote nay? Thank you. All votes are in and the motion carries.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay. And then so I'll throw it back to Dr. Anderson for superintendent's report.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have Dr. Church as our guest to come forward. Mrs. Sharp will also be coming or either sharing from her space a few opening remarks. Dr. Church, come on up, sir. It's like home away from home. He was here not that long ago. As we bring up the PowerPoint, Mrs. Sharp will just give some context for those that weren't here last time when Dr. Church visited. He is our partner as we're doing our strategic plan, looking at retention and recruitment of teachers and certified staff. Ms. Sharp, any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anderson. We are excited to have Dr. Church here tonight to give you an update. Just as a little history lesson, I guess. Ms. Wallace, Dr. Kipp, and I were able to attend an event last year at KASB where we were able to learn more specifics about Dr. Church's work with his partner Luke, and really felt like we could get some information to help us guide some of our decision making at the district level. We were also really interested in having a third party be able to conduct the surveys and give us some feedback. Really felt like there was a lot of power behind the identified drivers. And he gave specific examples that day about how districts had pinpointed tactics and strategies to address the drivers and improve their retention and engagement within the district. So he has been working with us since last year, and he is here to just give you an update.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. As we bring up the PowerPoint for Dr. Church, one of the things for board members to keep in mind, as of today, we have about 9% of our staff eligible to retire. So this is one of the other reasons why this is important. In the last 5 to 10 years, out of that 9%, it's generally about 10%, but that 9 to 10%, about half of those people do retire, and many are over 30 years of service. And so with that information in mind, we'll turn it over to Dr. Church. So there are many reasons. Recruitment and retention is important, even if you didn't have that as a risk factor. But that risk factor also causes us to continue to look at how do we recruit and how do we retain, given that information. Dr. Church.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anderson. Good evening, Board of Education. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you with a little brief update of things we're working on as we work through our work with Topeka Public Schools. I was here previously, but just wanted to kind of mention our work is the business, name of our business is the Educator Perceptions and Insights Center. And Dr. Simmering and I bring kind of a combined approach to the work that we do. My background is education, his is organizational psychology. So he has his doctorate in that combination of thinking about analytics and the psychology of the workplace. He does work with Fortune 500 companies as well as small businesses around engagement and retention. And so when we met, we started focusing a little bit because I was very interested in this from the education side as we started to see some of the indicators of the challenges we're facing with getting educators into the profession and then keeping them. So just a brief overview of what we've done so far. So we had the informed reports from the data that Topeka had in the 2021 and 2023 survey, which we'll look at again, the actual drivers in a second. We did some focus groups in the spring of the last school year. You can see just a little bit of information there where we themed that piece out. And then we also had an opportunity with the transition with leadership for human resources to have a day where we got to work with the whole human resources team to kind of just introduce them to the work that we do and to just kind of have conversations with them to get them up to speed on some of those pieces as well. So currently in progress, we are working on the champions process. We call it the champions team process. And I'll give you a little bit more information about that here in another slide. We're working on a couple data reports. One's going to be around triangulation of combination of different points of data and looking for common themes between 3 different points of data. And then also the demographic analysis, which when we look at the demographics that we have from the survey, we're able to look at some identified areas that are of importance to the district. And so the district has been providing a group of areas within our demographics where we can then look and see, for instance, a group that is extremely important across the state is that tenure group between 4 and 11 years of tenure or years in the profession, because they are significantly more likely, statistically significantly more likely to leave the profession at some point and significantly less engaged than other tenure groups. And so one thing, for instance, that we will likely do is take in Topeka's data and pull out those 4 to 11 year educators from the survey where they mark their tenure and see if there's any difference between that group and the overall group to be able to say, these might be areas that we can focus on to help that specific group because we know that they're a more at-risk group than some of the other tenure groups, as an example. And so Dr. Anderson mentioned that risk factor. So for us, what we try to do is to provide districts with, it's really hard to know. And even though this data can be valuable, it is perception data. So as Dr. Anderson said, you know, you may have someone who says, I'm likely to retire in the next 3 years, and they may end up working another 5 or 6 years, just because that is at that moment in time when they answer that question. But the question is in the next 3 years for retirement, because we know that hopefully folks will retire at some point, but leaving the profession, it's at some point I might leave the profession. And we combine those that say more likely than not or very likely and will probably happen. So the 4 and 5 on the Likert scale. And statewide, that number in 2021 was 30%. You can see in Topeka in 21, it was 14%. But in 2023, statewide, it moved to 28%. And you can see that in Topeka, it was right at about the same level as the state in 23. We saw a small drop in the state data in intention to retire in the next 3 years. We think that 2% drop was likely because we saw a little bump post-COVID of those who could retire. Many of them decided to retire with some of the coming back into the schools and some of that transition. So we think probably at a state level, that number of those saying they're going to retire in the next 3 years is probably going to be fairly consistent simply based on, you know, consistency of age and other things within the working population of educators. So as Ms. Sharp mentioned, the drivers are really the area that from our data we focus on to try to help districts to have the greatest impact on engagement and retention. What is a driver? A driver is simply an area of the teaching experience that comes forward from all of the pieces that we look at because it meets a statistical significance of 99%, which means we can, with very high confidence, 99% confidence, we can say that if we improve these areas, we will see results in better engagement and retention as a result of focusing those efforts. And what that helps us do is to see that while we have a lot of areas where people feel differently in terms of satisfaction, what are the ones that as we're trying to make investments and put energy and attention, how do we narrow that focus to those areas that will help us have the greatest impact? So if we look at the next slide, what we'll see is this is the breakdown of the drivers in Topeka Public Schools in 2021 from that data set, and then 2023. And what you'll see is some of these areas are high satisfaction. So for instance, the relationship with your principal. And I won't go through each of these, but that high example there is what we're saying is teachers are very satisfied with that. It's something that we would recommend to the district that you focus on continuing to be able to leverage, because in the area of engagement in 2021, it was significant, and in engagement and retention in 2023. So yes, we have areas that are moderate, low, and high. Those high areas are the types of things that you might use in recruitment as a way to talk to prospective teachers who might come to 501 and highlight those areas that are high satisfaction, but are also drivers. Our moderate satisfaction, a lot of times what we do there is try to examine those more deeply. So the idea being that sometimes the reason it's moderate satisfaction is it really might be an issue for secondary teachers, while it's not really an issue for elementary teachers. And if that's the case, it might come out as moderate. Now, sometimes there's not that difference. It just happens to come out in that range of moderate, but we want to look deeper and try to see if we can understand a little bit more as we look deeper at that piece. And then when we look at the low satisfaction items that are drivers of engagement, retention, or engagement and retention, those are the areas that we really want to focus on as we're trying to look at those. And so what we do is that kind of is our starting place for our additional work. So for instance, when we had the focus groups, the areas that we really asked teachers about were those drivers to better understand those pieces. I mentioned previously the champions team process. So we've been working with, and I've had a couple meetings now with both a secondary group, and you can see there of 13 educators, and you can see some focus areas that they're working on, and those may narrow even more, right? Because we're continuing to try to find those pieces. The elementary champions group, we had the longer session with them last night actually, and had that group together. So you'll see 13 educators, 11 educators. The idea is for it to be a small group of educators, and they'll get into even smaller groups as they focus on some of those areas. The key components of the process is to start with those data-driven items, and to be able then to look at those and really get closer and closer to what are those areas that we think can make a difference. The next step is to get them to look and talk to each other and work together, talk to other teachers, and just kind of get feedback. So what you'll notice is a list there of what we would refer to as a feedback loop. So the idea is that with each step, as they try to develop what they think would be a recommendation, they're sharing it with colleagues, getting feedback. They're sharing it with maybe a building administrator and getting feedback. They're sharing it with someone in the district office where it might be there getting some feedback, having a chance maybe to share it with Dr. Anderson and get some feedback. With the ultimate goal being as that continues to work and get modified and focused and those other pieces to get data and other pieces for them to look at, ultimately the goal is for them to have a few recommendations that they can share with the board as ideas on how they might make these things better. So in a recent district that we worked with, I believe they had, which was actually a few more than I think sometimes we've seen, but I think they had 7 recommendations, and the board in that district adopted, I believe, 4 of the recommendations. And so it's just a way for the teachers kind of from that being heard piece, from a bottom-up piece, to continue to do that, but to also get the feedback so that they're on a continuous basis recognizing that, coming forward and saying, it'd be great if we could have $2 million for X, Y, or Z. Our goal is for them to get that feedback so they can focus to areas where it's a little bit more tangible, actionable, and get that feedback from each of those groups. The demographic analysis I mentioned before, which is just that how do we look at some specific demographics to look at whether or not there are some differences with those key groups that are different than the whole. And then we'll do some actual focus groups in the spring. So one of the things we've talked about is let's get teachers in their 4 to 11 years of that key group, and let's bring them in for a focus group to see if we can gain any information from them about what specifically about this time in the profession is maybe having that impact. And again, that's something, that 4 to 11 years piece, that is something we're looking at across the board in the state and is drawing a lot of attention because, you know, we're really seeing we're a few years in, but, you know, then that 4 to 11 years, kind of that not brand new, but still fairly early in the profession, what might be unique about that? And there's a lot of assumptions that we make about what that might be. But when we can actually look at the data and then try to put color on the data by getting some just general questions and hearing from educators in that group. So some of those key demographic pieces to learn a little bit more. So I'd be happy to take any questions from the board. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Church, I was wondering how these drivers were selected. I noticed salary wasn't among them. And yet, over the last 10 years, teachers' salaries have basically gone down 8% compared to the rest of the society.
Right. So in the state data, in 2021, in the state data, the driver at a state level was current salary, was one at a state level. In 2023 at a state level, that shifted. Current salary was no longer a driver, but salary growth potential became a driver. So more likely that's where, you know, we can kind of make an assumption that those teachers that are younger in that 4 to 11 years. So if you just kind of process and think about, you know, the cost of college, the ability to buy a house, as they're looking at the teaching profession and they're thinking to themselves, okay, over time, when am I going to be able to do these things that I want to do? I want to pay back my loans, get a house. Well, if I look at our salary schedule over time, I don't know when I'll be able to do that. And so that could lead to them saying, well, maybe I want to look to another profession or look at leaving the profession. The other piece to consider is, because it's perception data, oftentimes teachers think about it relative. So for instance, when teachers assess their salary, they're likely assessing it in terms of what it is in their perception in comparison to other places. So for instance, someone in Topeka might say, well, while I wish I made more money, I know that our salary schedule pays us better than some of the other teachers I know in other districts. And therefore their satisfaction with the salary might be in comparison to others versus whether or not we think it is as high as it needs to be. They're answering it based on what they know to be. For instance, they might say, they're not thinking, well, I really think I should make $150,000, because they know when they get into education, they're likely not, you know, they know it's not the highest paying profession. But what they're able to do is say, but I do feel like in my district, I feel like wherever they are, I feel like my district, I feel like the salary in comparison to others, or recently we did get a raise that I really appreciated. And therefore I'm more satisfied with my current salary than I may have been before, if that makes sense. Okay, well, maybe I'll mention this last piece. The data you're sharing is true in terms of the quantitative drop of the 8%. But the data that we have is based on the perception of the salary, perception data versus it being actually the mathematical decrease. We're trying to determine the perception of how teachers feel about the current situation versus it being just the statistical up or down.
But there's very few people going into teaching compared to years past.
Right. Right. And yeah, that's true.
They're seeing their investment not being as good as going into something else.
Right.
In the mid-90s, nurses and teachers were basically the same, but now $25,000 a year difference.
And I think with some of the drivers you see at the state level and in the district, that the conditions of some of the things that teachers are dealing with in terms of some of the challenges they see post-COVID, with some of the challenges students are facing, behavior pieces, other pieces, that those are factors that may be playing into some of the decisions more so than the salary.
But sometimes you can put up with some discomfort if you get paid enough.
Fair enough.
Mr. Munoz, yeah.
Thank you for all the work putting this together. I think we hear from lots of different individuals from lots of different places, and it can be hard. I think it's human to have a trouble to distinguish sort of the tree from the forest, right? And so this sort of perspective helps us to see that we hear from perhaps common voices, and that maybe those concerns might be different from teachers as a whole. One thing that I recall seeing was a matrix on things sort of short-term and long-term. Is that something, I don't see it here, but is that something that we might at some point in the future, sort of immediate things that we could sort of put into play, or maybe they're already in play that we could sort of look at?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think you're referencing when I presented to you the first time, we had an example of kind of a chart from a district that we had previously worked with that were a little further ahead. And what they'd had is they had their drivers, then their short and long-term investments or their goals. And then we were able to then look at what's the jump in satisfaction, or I guess a decrease. In this case, they were all improvements of the impact that was having on satisfaction in those areas. And so as we're getting more information and drivers, then ultimately the district, for instance, might use that as a chart that they can use, and it's a way to communicate to educators and say, here's what we found out was really important to you. Here are the things that we're doing as a district to try to address these, and we'll continue to monitor it through this data to see if it's making the impact that we want.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Yes, Ms. Schmidt.
Thank you, Dr. Church, for coming and following up with what you've continued to do with the district. My question is, you referenced a school district that already made recommendations to their board.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be continuing to gather information to see if those implementations of those recommendations moved the metrics on future surveys?
Right, yes. So one of the things that we do so when we started, and I know I shared the last time, when we started this work, it was very, very foreign to the education profession compared to other industries. It was just something that we hadn't really broken through. And after the 21 survey, we had about 5% of districts that got the additional data that Topeka has, the Inform report that we call it. We're now at 20% after of districts in the state have secured that data 2 years later. And so what we're seeing is we're able to now to really track longer term, the more work we do to see the impact that it has each time we do the survey. So in 2025, we'll do the survey again, and we'll be able to look at those districts. So we were able to look at the 5% from 21 to 23, and then we'll be able to continue that so we can see those pieces. And then we can follow up, for instance, in a district like with the champions piece in that district. One thing we could do is go back to and say, okay, what were some of the things in this area that you thought made a difference, without saying, did you think this made a difference? Ask teachers that question and see how many times they bring up those investments or things that they are aware of because the district was making an effort to do it. As a matter of fact, one of the things we learn is that in some cases, the actual change, so something like fill rate for substitutes, as an example, in a district, it really might not, like we had a district where it went up 1 to 2%, their actual fill rate, but the satisfaction went up 48% amongst their educators. And it's because teachers need to know and feel heard about the things they're saying are effective. So much of it is they know that they're trying. They know the things they're trying. They know the district is making these efforts. And sometimes that in and of itself can make a difference in their satisfaction, because what we find in the engagement question is my voice and opinion are valued across the state is the question that is the lowest in those 12 engagement questions. So it's a way of showing that we're trying to understand and listen to the challenges you're facing. And some of that can make a jump, even though the tangible pieces might not be where we want it yet, but they see that they're making an effort to do something about it.
Okay, and follow-up question on that, you mentioned, my lens is always from private business and government, right? Do you feel like education, that teachers feel more or less heard or less ownership than, and that might be hard for you to answer because you're focusing specifically on teachers, but do you feel like there's more of a gap in education when that people feel that way than versus like other businesses or?
I don't know. And that's something I can check with Luke on because he does. I do know that I've read some things about some research that generally just employees of any kind feeling like they have some voice or people know those pieces. I think one of the things in education, and I mentioned this earlier, that can be affecting this is, we can't ignore the impact of COVID. COVID may be over, but impacts of COVID may not necessarily have changed. And so some of it is the work that we do because we work with students and young people, and we see some of those differences and changes can impact for educators something that in a place where you're making a certain product, you're back at work, you're not seeing community, students, colleagues, maybe dealing with things in the same way that we see in a profession that's as human as education. So I think that part of it is a little different, where in other industries, it might not be as affected by some of those developmental pieces that we see with students.
Okay, I just know from an internship I did at Goodyear like years and years ago, they hired back in 1992, just dated myself there, but they hired a consulting company to come in and it was all about, at the end, the moral of the story is that guys on the floor wanted to feel like they had ownership of their jobs and that leadership heard them when they said things. And so listening to you kind of talk about that one scenario with the example that you gave, it kind of made me think of that. And I was just trying to correlate if that's a education gap or, so.
You bet.
Other questions from here or Mr. Tatum online? Dr. Church, you had mentioned 2025 is that would be fall 2025,
right?
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking as far as whether there would be time as far as putting some things into motion before that would come up again.
And one of the things we're working on is we're starting to kind of refer to it as on year, off year. So on year, the survey data, off year strategy, some of the things we have in the agreement with the district, where in the off year, we're trying to get those things in place so we can start that. So you can't, and the reason, like I'll get emails all the time that say, well, when's the statewide survey this year? And they'll say, well, we don't do it this year. And I'm like, if we do it every year, nobody has time to try to do anything. We're just checking, and we're not getting a chance to implement anything. And so that's the reason why we have that split.
Great, thank you.
You bet.
I don't see any, oh, Ms. Boley, yeah.
So if I understand this right, in secondary, we already have the drivers from their discussion, correct?
Yes.
So, most of them are self-explanatory, except for professional development. Do I need to wait for them to come and report to us, or can I ask, what does it mean? It just says professional development.
Right. So quality of professional development is one of the items on there. And so one of the things that we will do, and we're just the beginning of the process, is, and I can already tell you that some places where we look at professional development, it might be that we just don't have very much, right? Where in other times we have a lot, we just think there are some components like this that would make it more valuable. So that's what we're trying to get, and what they'll dig in with is to talk to people, to get a sense from others, what are those specific things? Because it's easy to say, well, I wish it would have been X, but we need to be more specific about what are the specific aspects or structures or things that you think would make it more effective, or what are the things that you think? And so they start by having those conversations, narrowing, because we can't boil the ocean, right? So the idea is to try to bring some real specific pieces back and get feedback from the district as we work our way before we get to a point where we're refining and trying to make sure we get it to a point where they feel like it's ready to really be clear and presentable.
And then the elementary is just beginning to develop those, correct?
Right. So the elementary, we did a lot of the work last night and started to narrow it down as well. And so so like, for instance, one of the areas that's there is that they talked about was, teacher mental and emotional health and student mental emotional health and behavior are really in some ways connected, right? And therefore, we might want to try to narrow that down to something that can affect all three versus keeping them separate, because they are very interrelated. So right now, they'll start working on getting a little bit more down to, okay, what would that look like? What are those kind of topics that we can, so we start broad and continue to narrow and refine as we go through the process.
And then that list will probably be together in how many meetings?
Well, we'll start being able to get feedback from different groups. Probably, I would say we're trying to use some of the time, like with the teachers, where we're not having to bring them in outside of the contract day. And so, we try to, it's like we want to be quick, but don't hurry type thing.
Right.
But I would say we'll be starting to get feedback probably a little bit into January. Once we get back from break, I think they'll probably be ready to start getting, and once they start getting feedback, because then they can make adjustments, and then we'll get feedback, again, going through each of those feedback loops and getting some feedback as we go.
And then would that be possible from the district to get that list when he has that list together?
Yeah, I can provide the different areas that they've identified, like if professional development's one, I can provide that and that can be shared.
Thanks. Thank
You
you.
bet.
I appreciate that. Thank you for this work. It's going to inform us with a lot of information that I think our board has been asking about. So
Great.
appreciate it. It's good to be an informed board. So
Thanks.
I have a follow-up question.
Mhm.
How often do our groups, you talked about on years and off years. So how often do these champions groups need to be meeting to make sure that we get those things identified? Because I'm thinking if we're just now able to get that group together, that we don't have a lot of time before the next survey. So what ideally should we be looking at in order for those groups to meet to do this work?
I think that because they do some work on their own kind of in between. So I don't know that it's a number, but I would say from some of what we've seen, if we had, for instance, recommendations by around spring break, I think what we'd be able to do, because I think a lot of, as I said in these other districts, a lot of it is just being aware of what is the efforts. I don't think they have to be completely implemented, and we've been able to see the impact for a year before it will affect perception. Like, for instance, I know one of the things the board has worked very hard on with administration was like the cell phone policy, right? And like we hear teachers talking already, even though it was just a very recent thing, they're like, boy, since this policy's been in place, this is really, like, they say positive things about that. Well, even though it's not been done for 2 years, it's already affecting their perception of the benefit of it. And that would come out likely, if we apply that to some of those pieces, those things would likely come out by the time we do the survey. Because again, it'll be a mid-October to late November window. So that would still give, a couple months before the end of school, and then the beginning of school.
Outstanding. I just want to make sure we're giving our champion groups, the opportunity to get together to do the work to make this the most valuable for everybody involved.
And we're working to make it, like I have a little matrix of like the teams and when they have time. So it may be that just that team gets some time Cause I've gotten them to survey and say, well, on Tuesdays between, 4:30 and 5:30, I'm available. And so are these other two people that are on the team, so that we're not trying to find all 11. And so we're kind of doing a little bit more of that time for us to be able to help them, to give them that time, because it's harder to find 11 to 13 people's exact schedule to work. So,
Great.
okay.
Thank you, Dr. Church.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Church. We have an additional presentation. It's our graduation rate. So we're going to call up Dr. Kipp, and we have all three of our high school comprehensive schools here. Before Dr. Kipp presents as he's coming up, we're going to start with at least the high school principals. We know there's a play at T High and other principals have some things going on this evening. So as they have been in the audience, are y'all still back there? Mr. Dick and team and Ms. Watson and Mr. Buckendorf, they're going to just highlight some things that they're doing that's leading to their increases in their graduation rate. Then Dr. Kipp will present, and those principals that are still here can answer questions at the end. That'll give them some opportunity to have voice in this space. Mr. Dick, would you like to start? All three schools have above a 90% graduation rate. So first of all, we congratulate them on that rate. And we'll start with Mr. Dick to share some of the highlights that he feels has contributed, and then Ms. Watson and Mr. Buckendorf.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. I will say, and I'll kind of just speak for everybody a little bit, just doing the graduation thing for quite a while now with work at Topeka West and then now at Topeka High and doing this, but and just being part of conversations. Last year, we started with like school districts, so we get to have some conversations around accreditation with the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools and the Wichita Public Schools. They group us together for that, and one topic that was part of that was graduation one day. So we got to sit and all kind of share about graduation and things and how we do that. And I will say, of all of the things that we do graduation really, really well. That is something that as a school district and as a whole among the three comprehensive high schools, for the population of students that we serve and the difficulties that they face, we do this really, really well. And for us to be at the 93.7% at Topeka High and 94.2 at Topeka West and 93 at Highland Park, that's a lot of hard work and a lot of people doing lots of things for kids, whole teams of people to make that happen. And we do that really well. And it was very evident when we talked to those other school districts. They would give just about anything to get to where we're at with the students that we serve in doing that. So I don't have a lot to say. We do this every year. There's not a real secret to it for us. We all do lots of the same similar things. It's talking to kids, it's touching kids, it's all the administrators, the counselors, the principals, all of the other resources and people that we pour into just making sure that kids are successful in what they're doing. We've done well at the resources and everything we need to be able to do that. And so I won't say much more than that. I'll let the others talk a little bit more about that, but this is one area where I think we do things really, really well. So thank
And
you.
have you expanded courses at TCalc and other areas
yeah.
that have led people into the graduation
Yeah,
rate? Then we'll
we
turn it over to Ms.
certainly have
Watson if
expanded
there's
courses, and you're gonna see on the discussion item tonight, of course, change proposals for next year, and you'll see a pretty significant pile of CTE courses on there and working towards adding another pathway and some more opportunities for kids. And so, yeah, there's been an awful lot done really to try and increase the relevancy of school to kids and that they can see a future in what we have to offer for them beyond just college, but other things and opportunities that are there as well. And so, yeah, we continually look at that and work hard to make sure that what we're doing is relevant to kids and does make a difference in their life at some point in time. And so, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Dick. And Ms. Watson, I know you've added Elena Ross and some other folks to your team. So what have you done to continue to increase as your numbers went up this year as well?
I'm agreeing with Mr. Dick over there. It's all hands on deck, and then it's individual plans for individual kids. There's no one size fits all. So it's really working with each individual kid and finding out what they need in order to get through and then go beyond. And I will say that our partnerships with Washburn University, Washburn Tech, and TCalc have been a great help, especially for kids who they'll say school is not their thing. But when they get over there, school becomes their thing. So that has been phenomenal for us.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. And Mr. Buckendorf, anything that you've added or done or a comment you'd like to make before Dr. Kipp starts?
No, I don't have a whole lot more to say, other than ditto to what Mr. Dick and Ms. Watson said. I think it's just great teams at the high schools that, you know, just get the job done and serve our students well. It's really all hands on deck, like Ms. Watson said, effort from every staff member on up, just really doing what they can for kids.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to turn it over to Dr. Kipp. We do want to mention that Ms. Nicholson is in the audit. Ms. Nichols is in the audience, who does our creates our course guide, our 4-year guide. So when students have a 4-year plan, she's at TCalc under the leadership of Mr. Dick. And so as you have questions, we'll be asking her to speak to that as well, where appropriate. Dr. Kipp.
And I will add, we will only have to change the dates on these banners. I mean, they're all above 90%, so we'll save a little money that way. Okay. So as everybody mentioned, we do have some really good news in terms of the grad rates. We'll go ahead and get started. Just for a little background, how it's calculated, it's not, common misconception is you have 300 freshmen, 300, 4 years later, you should have 300 seniors graduating. Well, the state and actually nationally has adopted the cohort graduation formula. What is interesting about this year's class of 2024, this is the first COVID freshman class that started as 9th graders that are graduating this year in 2024. So I just wanted to point that out. And then mathematics behind, I won't go into all those details, but if you have more questions about the mathematics of it, we can certainly go into that. Looking at, because of the COVID pandemic situation, some kids kind of got behind. So the state does do a 5-year graduation rate. And as you see on that trajectory, we had almost a 3% increase in the 5-year rate. Now, unfortunately for accreditation and all the other expectations, we only look at the 4-year rate. So I think it's important to mention during this speech and during the administrators that were here tonight, whenever you're going to mention the word dropout anymore, we use the word non-graduate. And that's important to emphasize because non-graduate is implied in that 4-year cohort. We have kids that didn't make it in the 4-year cohort that are still enrolled with us. So they're not really dropped out. They're just taking a little longer to get that diploma. And as this 5-year rate shows, they are finishing. It's just taking them a little longer.
Okay. And because they finish in 5 years, they don't get counted in the cohort, just so we understand. We know that they are there. And then Cap City is an anomaly in that because they're special education, they may stay with us to 21. So we don't force them to leave at 18. If they want to stay to 21, all of those students may stay, which means they also don't get counted.
Yep. Yeah, there's no special provision for a school like Cap City with 100% special ed. This is our 4-year rate. Like I said, we did have a little dip from the previous year, about a 5-6% drop in the 4-year rate, which I think is attributable to that COVID class coming in that first time. And I'm guessing it's probably going to kind of level out for the next few years, but still a great trajectory going forward. As mentioned, the green, yellow, and purple, or gold, sorry, Topeka High. That is the Highland Park, Topeka High, and Topeka West graduation rates. 93% for Highland Park, 93.7 Topeka High, 94.2 at Topeka West. Cap City came in at 75%. They had 9 graduates and 3 dropouts, 3 non-grads, my apologies. And so mathematically, that doesn't give them a lot of leverage to make a high percentage. But I am happy to report schools like Hope Street that really try to catch kids up and meet that 4-year graduation mark. They're doing an amazing job at Hope Street with 90%. And of course, I always like to include the national and Kansas graduation rates as context. And you can see we're still outperforming those at our comprehensive high schools. Specifically looking at Highland Park, we kind of gone over this again, but they did have a nice little 3% jump from last year, coming in at 93%. Topeka High had a 0.7% increase. They had a little drop from last year, but they're starting to move that trajectory back up. Topeka West also had a nice little bounce from the previous year, coming in at 94.2. And Hope Street had a slight little dip, but still at that 90% mark. And this is Cap City. Because of the low numbers, there's a lot of variability, as you can see, across the years, and they came in at 75%. The gender gap, this is a national, every state in our union has a gender gap, girls graduating in 4 years more than boys. And so this year's 9% gender gap is right aligned with the national averages of gender gap. The subgroups, you know, we always like to look at, and the state likes to look at how we did for our disadvantaged populations, like our purely free lunch. We did have a slight drop in that, which is kind of corresponding to the general drop overall. Same thing with our special ed population, coming in at 78.6. And our ELL population had a slight decrease to 88.2. Again, these numbers are still the second highest subgroup grad rates we've had in 20 years. Some of the highlights, I've already kind of mentioned some of this. We did have fewer graduates in that 4-year cohort than we did previous year. All 3 comprehensive high schools had increased graduation rates. The one thing I didn't really dive into was the equity. You know, we always like to look at the big 3, Hispanic, African American, and white students. And within the margin of error, they were all within that 80 to 82%. Yeah. And then finally, you know, I include the slide every single year, but I think it's a great slide. And the principals here kind of mentioned some of these things, but these were systems Dr. Anderson put in place several years ago that continue to yield fruit. And I think, you know, from senior spreadsheets to more course offerings, just creating opportunities for kids and having that, you know, analogous to staff retention. And, you know, we want kids to be retained and engaged. And I think these 8 strategies and systems have been successful in some of these reasons for graduation increases. And I will honor any questions you have.
As we open this up for questions, and I'll invite just the principals to speak to this because their leadership and what they're doing in their teams and some of the new staffing models, and they all look different, are really drivers for the improvements that you're seeing. So I'm going to move over there and turn it over to the board for Dr. Kipp and our principals to give feedback.
Any questions from the board or Mr. Tatum online? Yeah, Ms. Bully.
Dr. Kipp,
Yes.
so we had lower number of students graduate this year. How does that affect our graduation rate compared to the year before?
Well, you know, higher numbers can kind of control for some of those anomalies. We did have about 96 fewer graduates in that 4-year cohort. So, you know, a non-grad may have more impact in the formula when you have a smaller numerator. And that's a great example with Cap City. They had 9 grads,
right?
3 non-grads who are still with them. But because of that 4-year formula, those 3 non-grads pull that down to only 75%. So it's just a numbers game. You know, I think one year we were pushing about 1,000 graduates. And so the non-grads kind of get averaged out, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a little bit of our dip in our graduation rate in these buildings could account for the number of graduates different from graduation last year?
Yes, I believe that. And that COVID freshman class, I think that some of those kids got a little farther behind and took longer to catch up and get the credits within that 4-year window. So.
We also increase the online students. And so we have added this month a college advocate for our virtual academy. Because we do need to make sure that students who never returned or have social emotional issues or just for whatever reason chose online long-term, that there really is someone working with getting them into college, even if it's virtual college, and getting them to graduate and monitoring that. You know, a lot of times students that are online, they work during the day. They might take 5 years, and walking across the stage for many of them isn't really something that they're necessarily focused on. But we believe the college advocate will yield some fruit in that regard. Did you want to add to that at all, Ms. Waller?
Just that we've been able to add that position through their school improvement grant, and look to see that graduation rate increase.
So Avondale West and online is the area that brings maybe the district overall lower. And while we can't necessarily identify who those students are, we do want to mention that as well.
And I think it's important to our district, our educators, our principals, even if they don't make it in 4 years, we're still getting them across the stage. You know, what's best for the student. It sometimes doesn't, you know, glorify us in data, but we're still getting them to the finish line, which for me as a board member, I would like to see that happen in 4 years. But just that we had this many students make it from our COVID group in the 4-year, I think is just says so much for our district, our administrators, our superintendent. That has just been incredible.
I think Ms. Boley hit it on the head, but I think it's important to mention the fact that, you know, out of my non-grads at Topeka West, which I know it probably impacts the other schools the same way, I had 2 that had transferred to an accredited online school that counted against us. I had 2 that got their GED that counted against us. And I had 1 graduate from another area school that counted against us because it's not recognized by the state. So out of my non-grads, I had 5 or 6 kids that actually have their GED or graduated from a high school that have counted against our graduation rate because of, I don't know, the State Department of Education's way of determining what the graduation rate is. So I think it's important to mention that because I know it impacts us greatly. With those 5 kids, we would have been well over 96%. So I'm sure it impacts the other schools as well. So I just wanted to mention.
But they made it.
That's a very good
But
point.
they made it.
Well, and they made it in 4 years also.
Yes.
So for example, if you graduated from Care Perryville, we had students that went there and some other private schools. They're not accredited by KSDE, so we don't get credit for those students that leave at the end of the, you know, that go there for that cohort. Similarly, for our GDs, when we do talk about students and we know they're not going to make it for 4 years with a 24 credit or 21 credit, we ensure that they go to, that they can take their GD and they can begin the world of work, or if they have children or any of those other things. We're excited that they've made it in the 4 years, but we will not get credit for that, which is different than some other places. They give you credit for GED in some of these other areas. In Kansas, you don't get credit for that within 4 years. In fact, that's going to come up at our December delegation. I believe Washburn Rural is going to be bringing up the fact about private schools and students who go there and how it impacts their graduation rate or impacted it this year, and the number of students that they're not going to get credit for as a result.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. The student Mr. Buckendorf referenced graduated at the top of her class at a Christian school here in Topeka, and we don't get credit for her, but we're good for her. She made it.
Yeah.
And if I could like keep on the microphone for a second. So you guys are in a new accreditation process for the state. And since we have a state board member here, sitting here tonight, what are you learning from that group? Because I do know you're placed with schools that maybe are learning from us. Are we learning from that group? Is it being useful for us being placed with Kansas, KCK and Wichita?
So Mr. Dick and
so this is your opportunity because we got a brand new school board member back here.
I think in the graduation world of things, they probably learn a lot more from us than we learn from them. But there are other topics that we have meetings for. I'm not on, I think Ms. Wallace is probably on most all of those. If it's a elementary related thing or not, a high school or graduation or something, I've been on all of those cohorts. But yes, we do learn things. There's value in it for us and what we do. We all, in the ones that I've participated in, all three of us have a kind of a presentation portion of that time and a discussion about what works for them. How do they do certain things compared to how we do it? And so, yeah, there's been value in that.
That's good to know.
We offer a lot more to the rest of them in the graduation area than they offer to us, but.
I know I
there's something to be learned.
contacted our Miss Ma before that I was concerned that we could maybe learn more from Blue Valley than Wichita. And that, you know, I saw maybe a concern there.
No,
And so,
we serve similar populations of students and have similar issues and concerns to them. So trying to find ways to navigate that, you know, with the Blue Valley, some of those, yeah, while they perform really well and all that, we don't always share the same population
right.
of students and what we're trying to work with. So that has been helpful. I don't know if Ms. Wallace wants to add any.
I agree with Mr. Dick. We absolutely find value and learn from KCK and Wichita. I did request from KSDE that maybe our urban cohort was a little bit larger and included a higher performing district so that we can have, you know, someone to aspire to, someone to really learn from that is being successful. They felt really strongly that our cohorts needed to be with like school districts.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that we're finding some value in it since it's like a lot of work to get accredited. So that's great to hear.
Dr. Bombrick had his hand up.
Well, first, who makes the rules as to who finishes in 4 years? A GED in 4 years ought to count. Who makes the rules?
That would be the Kansas Department of Education. They have set these rules. And so that would be something, you know, you're right, Missouri GED counts. You know, it's not a negative hit on a school.
But we know the legislature hates public schools.
No comment.
It'd be safer not to.
Yeah.
My second question is, I would like some data on freshman graduation rates in 4 years. And where do they go? What happens to them? Can we apply these strategies for the people who actually finish in 4 years to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I'll leave it to the experts here, but you know, junior spreadsheets, things like that.
Yeah, so we do, so I can speak to Topeka High currently. So in the past at Topeka High, we all have a senior spreadsheet and we all do a big tracking job of seniors. Classes other than seniors really haven't been done before, at least at Topeka High, up until this year. So I've asked all of the counselors and everybody to make sure that they, with every student they have, that they at least have 2 meetings with them a year and they track that and they start asking some of the same questions that we put on the senior spreadsheet, that they do it in the freshman, sophomore, and junior year, just so that we have some idea what kids are doing. We're tracking them and all that. Topeka West had done that previously. When I was there, I assume they still do spreadsheets for other classes beyond seniors to just help. It helps when we talk about making things relevant and meaningful to kids. If we know you're a freshman and let's just say, you know, you're a college bound kid, you're going to go to KU. When we have something that happens with KU, then we have a ready-made pool of kids that we can grab pretty easily and say, hey, KU is going to be here to do this thing. Get engaged with them and talk about what they're doing. Or if it's a manufacturer and we know this is some kind of work interest that you have and you've let us know that as a freshman or sophomore, that it's just easier to find kids and get the right kids connected to the right people to have those conversations. And all of that just helps make everything we're doing more relevant to them, that you know, we're doing meaningful things that matter to you as you learn and grow and what it is you want to do with your future.
Interesting to know those that don't finish in 4 years, they finish in 6 or 7. If they have trouble, they don't know English language, it might take them a couple of extra years.
And we can track that. We know that 3%, 3 to 4% of them finished in 5 years.
Yeah.
So we know that. So so there's some correlation to the dip and the rise in the 5-year will lead to the dip in the 4-year. But we certainly can track that as well. Even the EL students, we can track that as well.
What's really neat, the KSD has a partnership with the National Clearinghouse, so we can actually see if they went on, that's part of our accreditation, post-secondary success. We can see if they went and got an associate's, a bachelor's. I've seen kids that have gone through medical school, what university they went to. I mean, we're tracking pre-K all the way to post-secondary, postdoc work. I mean, they track it all, so love to share it with you.
And perhaps that is a step to talk about post, after high school, what happens to our kids. We used to have in the superintendent's conference room that big map, and Ms. Nordic would show where every student went every year. And that was a challenge to keep up in that way, but that is certainly a presentation worth giving in terms of where do they go? Thank you, Dr. Bonebrake.
Yeah, Mr. Munoz, I think has.
Yep. So one of the things that we heard, I believe from Dr. Kip a couple of board meetings ago was that the students who are showing up in our classrooms is changing somewhat. And so it's logical to think that's a lot of the things that we're doing right now to help students graduate will continue to be effective and helpful, but some of them might not. And we may have to sort of challenge ourselves to sort of do something and do things differently in order to adjust for the new students who are showing up in our schools. And so my question is, what sort of processes are in place that maybe we as board members might not see, but that help high schools, administration sort of be open to sort of challenging themselves and to think or receive new data on things ways that our other school districts are effectively sort of addressing that, closing that gap, that the 10% that's left.
I was just going to hit on maybe an example like at Highland Park, some of the shifting demographics, the large growing Hispanic population. And I don't want to put Ms. Watson on the spot, but I mean, I think she's agile and accommodating and recognizing those changes in her population over there. And I don't know if you have any examples of what kind of strategies you use to build that culture and honor that change.
One thing that we do as soon as they come in, we have like a whole group that sit down and we hand do their schedule. So it's not just the counselor. We have our social worker in there. We have our ELL teacher in there. So we're working together to find out what classes are best suited for that student as we get to know what they have done or haven't done. So it's not just, okay, you're a freshman, here are your freshman classes. We handpick every single class and think about the teachers that are in there, the other students that are in there. And then we're excited because we are going to be the pilot for the newcomers program, and which allows us to even go deeper. So we are very, very aware of every student who's coming in. And again, it's individual. What does that one student need? Oh. We also have started our freshman academy back up. And this first round actually went way smoother. I thought I'd have some pushback on all of our upperclassmen staying out of the hallway, but I found out they don't want to go in the freshman hallway because they don't want to be near freshmen. So it went pretty smooth. So that's been really great because the freshman teachers, they're teamed with their kids. And so when they meet in their PLC, they're discussing kids and talking about ways to make sure that they're successful. So stage 1 of our freshman academy happened this year.
I would add just a little bit to that, one thing that I've always appreciated about the Topeka Public Schools, clear back from my time starting as a teacher, clear through now, is that this is not a place where people are afraid to try things. So we think there's something that will work. You really have the freedom and the autonomy to try what it is that you think might work, learn from it and adjust. And we're pretty flexible about those things. And so a process that I've used everywhere that I've been since I've been principal, and pretty much everybody does now too, is we, similar to a data consult that's on a much bigger and less frequent scale, we weekly look at data around kids and sit and have conversations about the school as a whole and then individual divisions and kids individually. And so that really, to your point, Mr. Wynn, gives us a chance to what are the things that are happening now that are impacting us and our kids, and then how do we adjust and make changes to that? And really, there's been great, over the years, really, flexibility in the board and the district administration ought to let us have the freedom to do what we think we need to do as we can to meet the needs of kids and teachers and everything at that time, just to shift and be nimble when we need to be able to do that to meet needs of more kids. And so I don't see that process changing at all, but that's just something we all do on a weekly basis to track data and kids and have those conversations week to week and make changes as we need to. You know, last year at Topeka High, we spent time talking to freshmen that were struggling and sophomores that were struggling, and what is it that makes school hard for you? What could we do? And part of what they said was, well, block class periods are long and this and that. And so we said, okay, so the next semester we switched and had 3 short skinny days and 2 block days. We found that really, they thought that made a difference to them. The data had the opposite effect. It did not. And they did well. And we spent a whole lot of time in the hallways trying to help get kids to class. And so we learned pretty quick. If we can keep them in class for a longer period of time, they're out of the halls and they're in there learning, and that's a better thing. And so, but we had the ability to do that if we wanted to and change and try to figure those things out. So I think that's always been helpful in what we try to do.
Oh, good. I appreciate that there is a sort of a culture of innovation and that you have a sense that you can do that. And I think that that's going to be an important part of us trying to crack this code and get those last few students. Those last percentage of students is going to be very hard, and it's also going to require us to be bold. So thank you all.
Yeah. Dr. Albright, yeah. Go ahead.
There's been a lot of medical studies that suggest that high school age students should probably start school at 9:30 instead of 7:30 or 8. Give them a little couple more hours sleep. Their diurnal rhythms are screwed up. Has that ever been?
We had a presentation from DCAC like 2 years ago about that.
Didn't they talk about maybe a half hour?
They did talk.
I think
about
they
that.
did, yeah.
Yes, the student superintendent advisory felt that the added time at the end of the day and all of these other things would be problematic, but the personal wellness day that has now been added in the calendar is one way to give some space and time for catching up and all of that. What all of these leaders have done, there are opportunities where they can have some flexibility in schedule. So like a student might have a work-based class where they can actually go to work and get some opportunity for credit for that if they're working in alignment with their areas of need in their own schools. Some students may have their day start at TCALC, which is a different time than their regular school. So there's flexibility within the schedule within the school to some degree based on credits that they need. But overall, the study was completed. High school students felt that the time, because many of them are in extracurriculars, if you are in any extracurricular, you're going to be getting to school pretty early and you're going to stay there till the school day ends. And changing the time of the school day, if you think they're going to wake up at 9, if they're in band, JROTC, cheerleading, they're still getting there at 6 a.m. or 7, early in the morning. But there has been some change in flexibility in that area as a result of that study in the ways that I've described.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for our principals?
Yeah, Ms. Boley.
I'm just wondering, what are we doing to bring the male and female data closer together? What are our concerns there, and why is that happening in our district? Do we even know?
Now, nationally, this is
Right.
in every state, women outperform men.
Yeah,
So
of course.
that's, I mean, this is in every state. This isn't a Topeka thing. However, having said that, in terms of leaders, would you like to speak at all to the gender gap?
I know it's a really hard one. I'm just wondering, looking at all this data, are you finding something that's creating this difference?
If I may, as Ms. Watson comes to the podium, I will also say, if you look at the behavior in special education and criminal justice system, you'll see there's a high percentage of males in those spaces. So I suspect there's some level of impact as it relates to those areas of keeping young men more engaged throughout their high school area. And the after-school programs we have at all of our schools and the intentionality with targeting men. I know Highland Park will likely share, they have a Girls Up Club, but they didn't have anything opposite of that. So there are some things with intentionality of targeting young men to keep them engaged. So that may be one avenue. Mrs. Watson.
What I'm starting to learn is it's exactly what you said with engagement. Some of our most struggling kids, I have started over the summer really getting to know and work with on like what they want to do with their life. And these are kids that you wouldn't necessarily think like TCAL, Washburn Tech, because, they're roaming the halls. But I submitted their names and sent them. And now they're like doing things over there and it's their favorite class. So I'm starting to learn I need to really target more of our boys that are struggling for engagement and get them over to tech or Washburn Tech. Yep, because it's that hands-on.
It's the hands-on
Exactly.
problem solving, building.
Young Men's Club.
They're going back and forth on the names right now, but the boys are excited. They've been complaining for years. Every time we have a girl up meeting, they're like, can we attend? No, you can't attend, sorry. So they have finally rallied and found staff members who are starting their young men club. So they're really excited.
Thank you. I know you guys have your heads wrapped around trying to figure it out. So that's like two really great solutions. So I love hearing that. Thanks.
I think that's it.
Thank you so much to our principals. Congratulations on being over 90% and increasing again, and keep up the great work. That concludes our presentations.
Yep. So we have a discussion item next. The 25-26 course change proposals.
And I believe as Ms. Wallace gets ready, we're really wanting to answer questions based on what we've uploaded for you in terms of course proposals. If there are questions for Ms. Wallace at this time.
On the first page, there's just a typo, and it probably doesn't matter, but it's orchestral design instead of architectural design. I thought maybe it was something with agriculture or something like that. And then I saw down in the description, it's our architecture design 1 and 2.
We'll get that fixed. I would share just some highlights. We are looking at the new pathway for manufacturing. So you'll see some courses added for that. There is a new middle school course for 8th grade for middle school media design. French is piloting it this next semester, and it will be a class where they create the yearbook. We also have contemporary college mathematics, which is going to be an added course that is part of the Board of Regents and the universities. You kind of need to take either college algebra or contemporary mathematics, depending on your area of interest and study. So college algebra would be for those who are more interested in things related to math and science. And the contemporary college mathematics would be more like psychology teaching, depending on what level you're teaching and what content. Also, there are a couple of special education resource classes. The rest of it is almost entirely CTE courses and changes for pathways, which is why Ms. Nichols is here, so that if you have questions about pathway changes.
And if there are no questions, Ms. Nichols, would you like to just give an overview of just highlights so that you want to share as you come to the podium? You've been sitting in here for a few hours, so we want to make sure that give you some voice, that if there's something that you'd like to share as highlights that are new for the public who's listening to know, or for the board to know, we'll turn it over to you.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for having me. Ms. Wallace really hit the new pathway automation, and we kind of talked about that a few weeks ago when I was here. A lot of them are renaming to be, so you'll see like parenting renamed to family studies, things that are just a little more relevant. And KSDE did 4 pathway overhauls. So they scratched some classes, they added some classes. So a lot of those are just kind of tweaks. And one that I'm excited about is the education pathway added classes. So I'm excited to expand that pathway at TCALC, and we're working on an apprenticeship with the district and a partnership with some dual credit classes. So we will add more than the state, I think, to make all of that happen. But yeah, they're mostly minor changes.
Any questions? Ms. Boley?
I know Dr. Anderson is trying to steer away from questions so we can get out of here. but
No.
I did have just like, there's a change of title, like educational leadership A and B. I'm assuming that's an order. You would take A before B.
Right.
And so with the change of titles, would there still be direction about which one you have to take first?
Yeah, and they added a coaching leadership course to that sequence too, and you'll see that. But right, so some of it is clarity. So A for us in this district means fall, and B means semester, or semester 2, spring. The way the state had it was A was a full class, a year-long class, and B was a follow-up 1 semester class. So it actually just turned into, right, 2 semesters, very clear and concise, this one and then this one, instead of A.
It still has to be taken
In
in
an
order
Yes, yep.
somehow.
And we do that in TCALC pretty strategically. Those classes are exclusively offered at TCALC for now.
So as a parent, if I'm looking at that, I'm not sure I could tell which one the students would have to take first.
Yeah.
I think that clarity piece for me wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's
Just-
listed on our website right in there. Semester 1, you take these classes. Semester 2, you
Okay.
take these classes. 3 is this set and 4 is this set. So-
Something I can't get into. And so the other thing is KSDE stopped supporting classes. So what does that mean?
So there's a cycle, every pathway gets reviewed. I think it's 4 or 5 years. And the industry folks get together and say, this has changed. You can take, so the ag ones had some changes that went away, or they retitled, they restructured what was taught in the course based on industry needs. So the new automation pathway came out of that manufacturer saying, we need kids to know more. So they added a whole slew of classes, which we hope to add. But yeah, they do take stuff away over time that becomes outdated or not in line with workforce studies.
Which changes some of our options
Mhm.
that we have to put in place. Thanks. I like them all.
Okay, Mr. Munoz?
Yeah, I just had more of a comment that I'm really excited about, for instance, intro to manufacturing. Not all of our students plan to go to, college, right? But we have a lot of manufacturing, a lot of local companies here who are looking for individuals. And I think this, opening up this sort of path with just a couple of small, certifications can go into working with our local machinery and our local companies. And I think seeing more of that excites me because we all often talk about, and we sort of get into the habit of talking about college or whatnot, but manufacturing, our local companies are looking for, and we can set our students up for a great life and a decent living.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that.
A lot of those businesses are very excited to have that partnership with us too. So, and we'll pay for kids to go to college. So it's not just to get out of high school and get a job. They want them to have that opportunity too.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
Other questions? Mr. Tatum or the rest of the board? No? Okay, thank you very much. Up next, I think we do have an action item. The approval of the One United document that we discussed last board meeting, so.
And there are no changes. The other boards have approved them. You shared you like them, so they're We're just asking for you to take action since we didn't ask at the last board meeting.
Yep, so I would just need a motion for that.
I move to approve the One United Voice legislative platform as reviewed and discussed at the last meeting.
And a second? Ms. Boley? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote.
And the vote is open. Dr. Bonebright, you want to vote by hand? Yay, okay. Thank you. All votes are in. Carries.
Okay. We'll go to board member comments, and so I don't forget, I'm gonna go to Mr. Tatum first. So I don't forget you, sir.
I appreciate that, Dr. Schumacher. And I'm finding that my connection is a bit unstable, so I'm going to be quick. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations to Mrs. Schmidt and to Dr. New for their electoral victories. It is really good to be able to cheer them on and to be able to in knowing what kind of public service hearts they have to see them stepping into new roles and ready to do some great work. So definitely congratulations on that. And I also wanted to give a special shout out to you, Dr. Schumacher. You've done a great job of facilitating. I appreciate you stepping in for me this evening. And I think this has been a great meeting. I think you might have done better than what you thought you did.
I know I'm good. Don't worry about it. Keith, best meeting of the year. Thank you, Mr. Tatum. I appreciate it and the kind words. Dr. Bonebreak, I will look at you. Microphone, please.
Yeah, another new cartoon. I keep getting emails from frustrated teachers about the weapons of mass distraction. So I've passed out another one. I have 3 more copies if anybody wants one. But my wife didn't get a kick out of it at all. I thought it was kind of funny. But Dr. New and Lisa, there was cyber betting on the presidential race. There should have been cyber betting on them. I mean, I thought they were shoo-ins, but neither here nor there. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Bonebreak. Ms. Foley.
So comments and then committee reports.
Whichever you want to do. Yeah.
Okay. So comment, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Sheldon. Preschool, they went through their process with Head Start and were very successful, and they are off review, and that allows us to be able to be first in line to get our grants for Head Start. So they were just fabulous during that hearing, is what I think they call it. So they did a really good job, and we got our report back really quickly. So I'm assuming they were very pleased with what happened. I was able to attend a student advisory committee over at T High today after Mr. Munoz and I asked students to write down their concerns. Dr. Anderson led through those concerns, and the students gave a great presentation about why they thought it was important or not important. And they will be getting their list together of what they have concerns about to work on this year. And one of the things they did last year, I learned, was they were concerned about the lunches at T High. One young lady was diabetic, and she was saying that the lunches we're much more healthy, have much more healthy choices for her to make it through the day. So it just shows you the power of our student and our student advisory. And Dr. Anderson, thank you for giving them that voice. I appreciate it. Our tech committee, I have 2 other members here on the board, but one of the things we do know is that we need to really look, since we're modernizing our technology since we wrote our policy, that our policy committee will probably be looking at our policies in technology and in improving those and updating those changes. And we had some discussion about esports and how we'll implement those in our district and keep our system safe. So those were the 2 big takes I took out of that one. And met with the calendar committee. We have another meeting. They'll be introducing 2 calendars for teachers to vote on for next year. And great discussion about what changes they want to see. And I completed my time on the Blue Ribbon Committee for the state board. I was asked to sit on that. And the recommendations will be going to the state board at this next meeting. So if anybody's interested in hearing those recommendations on screen time, cell phone, and mental health around that, and the recommendations the committee will make to the school board, which they're just recommendations, so everybody needs to understand. Our committee had a little bit of hard time understanding. They're recommendations to the board, so those will be there this next week. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Foley. Ms. Schmidt.
I don't have a lot of comments other than I want to say thank you, Dr. Anderson, for our do unto others pen and stickers. I just think this is a great time. You know, the election can be very controversial. People are very passionate about who they believe should hold an office. And, you know, it was a great reminder seeing some people post on social media that regardless if you're person won or lost, you know, remember the others, there's 50% of the people who feel, you know, or grieving and so I just think this is a great campaign, and it was kind of kismet to me that you saw that and got to pick these up for us, because I think that's what's most important. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt. Mr. Munoz.
So we had a policy committee meeting on the 28th, I believe, and so nothing to report exactly other than that we're continuing to work on revisions of policy that need updating. And when we have something to bring to you all, we'll give you a heads up on that. As far as Equity Council, I believe Ruby Bridges is going to be in town on the 14th, and I'm going to be out of town, so I'm really mad at myself being out. But if you all might be available, they're going to be. She's going to be here at Washburn University on the 14th at 11 a.m. at Washburn University White Concert Hall. So look into that. My kids heard about it, and you know they've heard of Ruby Bridges, but they've heard of Ruby Bridges, the little girl who walks to school, and they were just, their minds are blowing. She's going to be here in Topeka. So if you have that chance, take yourself and your kids, if you have them, to see her. That should be amazing. The last couple of weeks, I've been to a couple different things. You know, if you don't already know, Topeka Public Schools graduates amazing alumni who go on to do incredible things. Some who are here still locally living, and others who have gone on around the world and around the country. And every year, our high schools recognize and nominate individuals and bring that sort of news for people to know about. And so I was excited and eager to sort of attend a couple of them. I couldn't attend all of them, but I was at a few of our high schools, and it's just always interesting to hear the paths where our alumni go off and the sort of the impact that they have. And all of it starts here at Topeka Public Schools. And so we do a great job of preparing individuals for the future, and we should make sure and say that as often as we can. I also attended a Philippines cultural event. We have a lot of teachers who are coming from all over, and when they can plug into a community who's already here. I think that's amazing. And that whether it's teachers from Philippines or a teacher who's from Southwest Kansas or Southeast Kansas, being able to plug into community is a benefit and something that we can sort of tout to teachers who are thinking about coming to Topeka Public Schools. So that was interesting. And the last thing I'll say is that I stopped by and talked to college prep students who are, as we all know, amazing, who are, off the charts. And we know that they're going to be doing phenomenal things, but for an hour, I was able to stop by and visit with them students, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Thank you, Mr. Munoz. I was thinking, Ms. Schmidt, that the most exciting thing over the last 2 weeks was joining technology committee with Ms. Boley and I. But yeah, thank you, Ms. Boley, for covering technology committee, and congratulations again to Mrs. Schmidt.
I had 3 pages of notes from technology.
know,
So I figured you
it's
didn't
so
want me to
exciting.
go over them, so.
And also congratulations, Dr. New, again. It's very exciting times. I really don't have much, but this is the season of theater and productions and that kind of stuff as some of our fall sports start to wind down as we transition into the winter seasons. Look out, I believe this weekend, Highland Park is doing their production of Beowulf, and then their I believe next production, or sorry, the next weekend there's at least Topeka High has a production, and maybe Topeka West is coming up as well. So
Yeah.
just something to keep a lookout on the horizon. And I know that a lot of the board members and a lot of our community enjoys supporting and lifting up all our different students. I think that's all I have. And so I think we're ready for adjournment. So I just need a motion.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, and a second.
I second.
Mrs. Boley,
Okay. And raise your hands if you're in favor.
all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you.